Hello. I'm still alive. I got in about 15 minutes ago. They kept me there for ever. Put me through some new and interesting tortures. And they had me on a medication that's called Sodalol that makes me feel like garbage. But apparently, they liked the effect it was having on my vitals, on keeping me my heart in rhythm and keeping my blood pressure low and my heart rate uh, reasonably low. At one point in there, and there's a story behind that I'm not going to tell right now because this will be short, um, where my pulse rate was 220. So, yeah, I was in a lot worse shape than I thought when I made the Here We Go Again video where I'm like, ugh, another emergency room visit. But I had time to think about this, and they were like, I was talking to one of the nurses in there, and she was like, I was in here December 5th, like 20 days before last Christmas. They just shocked me in the ER and sent me home. And I was home like within 5 hours. And she's like, they're not going to do that. And I'm like, well, why aren't they going to do that? She said, they're just not going to do that. You're not on blood thinners. And I was like, well, I wasn't on blood thinners before. And they did that because I know when I go into arrhythmia. So, it takes a certain amount of time for your blood to clot when you go into arrhythmia. So if you know when you go in, like if you're in there within an hour and a half, 2 hours, there's no time for no clotting to occur. There's no time for risks of stroke and death and all that. So she says, I'm just telling you what I know. So I had time to think about it before I saw a doctor, and I was like, what? How can I phrase this question in such a way that there's no evading it? And I was like, okay. Um, I, I figured it out. I was like, when she came in there, the doctor in question, I said, I wasn't on blood thinners when I was here December 5th of 2018. And I was cardioverted in this very room and released within 5 hours. What's different between now and then that you won't do that? No answer. None. What's the difference? There was no difference. The difference is you get a different doctor, and there's doctors that are willing to, you know, listen to the patients and say like, well, this motherfucker's been through this like 4 times before, so he knows the score. And he was like, you understand the risk of um, strokes and possible death and all that. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. You know, and I even asked the nurse, is there anything I can sign where I'm like, you know, uh, I I absolve you of any wrongdoing in the event of any medical impending medical catastrophe or something along those lines. And she's like, no, there's no such paper that exists. And I'm like, ah, shit. And she said, they're not going to do that to you down here in the ER. They're going to take you upstairs. And I'm like, hospital stay, hospital stay. But anyways, so I asked that question and I didn't get any answers. The real answer is, of course, you have a different doctor this time, but they're not going to say that. They're not going to say that. That's the answer to the question. It's like you have a different doctor this time. This doctor doesn't want to take any chances. Maybe his medical malpractice insurance is already like really fucking high, and he doesn't want to make it any higher. You know, so um, yeah, I talked to the I talked to I don't know. I think she was just like an attending physician in the ER. The first person I talked to. Then I talked to somebody who was an actual cardiologist, and they're like adamant about it. And it's like you're not on any blood thinners, and you know me, I can't help but tell at least some of the story. So later on, this cool motherfucker with his Australian accent. I meet him later in the day, right? I man, I am starving. I haven't eaten for 18 hours. I got like a splitting headache, and I'm like, nurse, I think I figured out my headache, man. Can you get me something to eat? So they're like, I think I can get you a lunch tray. So I ate, and then this Australian dude saunters in there, and he looks at it, and he said, you just ate, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, because he was going to shock me right then. They had a little heparin in me, which is a blood thinner, and they were going to shock me, and I would have been out the same day. I would have been out that evening and home. But because I had a full stomach, they couldn't do it. And then they were wanting to try. They were like, he was like, "Well, mate," he said that a lot. I'm not going to attempt an Australian accent because one of my great regrets in life is not being able to do accents or impressions. But he was like, "Well, mate, um, you know, doesn't seem to be working." And I said, "Well, it worked last time." And he said, "Well, we seem to have different definitions of working." And because I said, "Well, I meant that it got me back in rhythm." And he said, "Yeah, but you seem to keep going back out of rhythm, and it seems to be a pattern that's probably just going to keep getting worse." And the A word was not mentioned, which is ablation, which I thought was the O word, because I said that to the nurse. I said, "I don't even want to talk about the O word." And she's like, "Orgasm?" She's like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." But it actually begins with an A, and it's ablation, and it means they put a catheter inside you and burn out some. They did it to Tito Francona, manager of the Cleveland Indians, because they couldn't get his arrhythmia under control, and they burn out some nerves. And yeah, it doesn't sound like all that much fun to me. You know what I'm saying? So, so he's like, "Oh, we got different ideas of working." And he goes, "Besides, I'd hate to see a stroke happen to a young lad like yourself." And I'm like, "Why do you keep calling me a lad? How old are you?" And he's like, 46. And I'm like, "Well, I'm 51." And he goes, "Well, if you walked around this ward with me and saw all the people that I saw, you'd understand why I was calling you a lad." He said, "Boy, I'd hate to see it happen to a young lad like yourself." And, you know, as far as a stroke. And so, yeah, I'm not. I'll do a more detailed account of the whole thing. I just wanted to let you know that I was all right. And I got home. I'll see if I can duplicate what I did in the that lobby. There we go. That's the good stuff right there. And problem is, I don't know what kind. I feel bad, man. I feel like they kept asking me to describe how you feel on this medication. And I'm like, well, because the symptoms for it are like lightheaded and dizzy. And I'm like, well, I'm not dizzy. I said, I feel like I have a fever. I feel fatigued and washed out, and it's like I feel like I can't expand my chest like I should be, but I think that was just the anxiety of feeling like that. I think I'm doing okay right now. Um, as far as I wasn't feeling like I was getting full lungage, if that's a word. Uh, but man, I went in there on the 12th, and today's the 15th. So doing the math, that's like 3.5 days. Um, well, there's a clock over there. It's about 3.5 days on the dot right now, because it says 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and I went in there at 4 in the morning on a Thursday. Is when I went into arrhythmia, and by the time the ambulance got here, it was probably 4:30 to 5 o'clock. But man, I don't know. I saw Stampy outside, and I'm like, Chris been around? When I was coming home with the walker, I could barely walk and shit, because I've been doing nothing but laying in bed. And she was like, Like, no, he ain't been around for like 3 days. And I said, I don't want nobody knocking on my door for 3 days minimum. I said, just tell him if you see him to leave me alone. Just want everybody in here to leave me alone. Let me chill and get my bearings straight. Don't be, people tend to be selfish assholes in this situation. And I told I didn't tell anybody I was in the hospital. I had no company at all. Except for, I told my niece so she could feed the cats. They had one meal during that 3.5 days. I said, just load them up with food. She said, I put 4 cans of food out there and a whole bunch of dry food. And, I just wanted to be in bed. I didn't want to lower down no food right now. And the bad thing about this it's so stupid of me to do. Because it takes so long to trust your heart again, and then you kind of like forget. So between December of last year and like 2 months ago, I wasn't even really thinking about it that much anymore. But it takes like months for you to trust your own heart. And yeah, I'm gonna be trying to get out of here as soon as possible and just skip my whole revenge plot against Gerald, which is he's really the author of my misery here. He's really the cause. Like, I figured it out. Like, um, if I had my first bout of arrhythmia when I was 36, and then it was 10 years, that mean between my next bout of arrhythmia, that would be when I was 46. That meant that I was living here, and that was the year he bought the building in 2013. And since then, I think I've been shocked. This is the fourth time, and you know the history behind what it's been like living here. And the cool thing is the new place that I got picked out, like I may have said in another video, is like a mile and a half from my policeman friend's house. It's not where I thought it was. So it's close by his house. It'll be farther away. It's far enough away. It's in Canton. It's far enough away from Massillon. I don't have to deal with any of these motherfuckers that didn't help this situation at all. They're nothing but a bunch of leeches, and now are officially ghosts as far as I'm concerned. Um, you know, even this Chris dude, yeah, he ain't got my number. This kind of move. And like, you got a TV out of me, you got a PlayStation out of me, you got a DVD player out of me. You got a lot. You got, like, one day I just gave him $10, and I'm like, he was making calls about his alcoholism. And I'm like, well, good for you. And I had like 10 ones I got specifically for us to play poker with. And I was like, here, because he was clearly, he's physically dependent on alcohol. He was clearly like climbing the fucking walls, but he was making the calls, setting up the appointments. So after he set up the appointments, I was like, here you go, man. Because he's rolling up what he calls dog turds and smoking. And I said, man, get us some real cigarettes and buy yourself a couple of beers, because it's not like he's gonna cold turkey off of that stuff without help. And he's got like stuff that he can't talk about. You gotta be able to talk about all that bad shit that goes on in your head and about all the bad things that happen to you. The guy can't even listen to a sad song, man. Like, he doesn't even listen to sad songs. Yeah, so he ain't nowhere near dealing with his childhood and his mess. So I didn't feel bad about or enabling him or whatever by giving him a couple beers so before he'd start getting the shakes and stuff. And I'm trying to think if that's the day I played poker with him and smoked the cigarettes, and then the next day was the day that I had arrhythmia. I don't know, but yeah, yeah, I can leave him behind too because I have to take care of number one. I'll even explain it to him, man. To be honest with him, it's like, you know about taking care of number one. I was like, I can't be around nobody that smokes. I'm an addict. It's like if you were trying to quit drinking, you wouldn't want to hang around somebody that was drinking all the time, would you? You know, it's like, most times it's better to be honest with people. And sometimes that gets you in trouble. Like, I was thinking about the crackheads that live upstairs, and they saw the ambulance come at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And so they know that I'm gone. And Roy next door texts me and he says, uh, I'll just say her name. Michelle says she saw an ambulance outside. Are you okay? And I said, no. And I said, I'm in the hospital, but I'll be back soon in capital letters. You know, because I thought I would be back soon because I thought I was going to get cardioverted that day, but I ate that meal. And that screwed everything up. And you got to be like, it's nothing by mouth after midnight type of deal. So I don't know if that was before. I was probably before I ate that meal that I wrote him that. I don't know when I wrote him that. Anyways, our point being is I it's not I'm not a liar, so it's not my first instinct to lie and cover my ass. But what I should have said is like it was a false alarm though. You know, I got to ride back home and I'm home now. You know, but instead I'm like I'm in the hospital and so crackheads know you're in the hospital and your house is empty and the Warvet guy's been in your house and know that you have valuable stuff in your house. This is not a good thing to be thinking about when you're trying to survive and you have a heart problem and you're trying to stay calm. It's like, when I come home, is my house going to be broken into? But it wasn't. It's still in the same mess with the same valuable shit lying around. So, anyways, I'll give you the longer version later on. This is still 17 minutes, so, I apparently haven't changed. Um, hopefully I can, like, I got an appointment on the 19th. I'm going to try to make that appointment. I got a dentist appointment that's badly needed on the 20th. I might have to set that one back, you know. But I'm going to make the one on the 19th because that's like, they're not invading my face, they're just talking to you. And a matter of fact, I can show them the now mutilated hospital band to show them I was in the hospital and explain why. And maybe get some funding to move out of here because I just don't have the money right now. The place I'm moving into, uh, or I'm hoping to move into, was referred to by my cop friend as a high rise. Now, how many stories that means, I don't know. Whether they have any openings there, I don't know. But that's where I want to move to, and because he's a policeman, he's like, there's a police station across there, so he knew where it was right away, and he's like, oh, that's a substation, which I'm not sure what that means. I mean, that's like a temporary. I don't know what that means. He said it was a police substation, which I suppose means it's a little tiny police station or whatever. But he's like, oh, it's a pretty nice area there. You know, I have another free uh, month's rent here, so maybe I can get to where I can not have arrhythmia and survive and not have to deal with madness. And then my stories will be boring. Won't be interesting anymore. And I don't. Maybe I'll have to become a political commentator. Oh God. Um. Anyways, yeah. My case manager called me while I was in the hospital, and I told her that I was in the hospital, and she's probably like due for a visit or whatever. I should just crack the door open, and I was like, take a look inside. You got your pick: roaches, bed bugs, total disaster. nice aromas, you know, dishes in the sink forever. You know, I'll be able to get help, be able to get somewhere to move. I'm just worried about like them thinking I can't take care of myself because nothing's more important to me than independence. Um, it's kind of interesting how the knee, of all things, like my Achilles heel is my knee. All the things I've been through in my life, and that fucking Baker cyst is what destroyed me. Because of the Baker cyst, it affected my walking badly, and because it affected my walking badly, it affected my cardio, and I couldn't keep my cardio up, and it caused me depression, which led to bad behaviors and stopped me taking care of myself physically. And it all started because of my knee, and then I started using like canes and walkers and stuff like that. This was like 4 years ago, and it's ruined relationships. Like I said, it ruined my relationship with my sister because that's really what that was about. Was like, you're too high maintenance now. I don't want to be high maintenance. I want them to operate on my knee and fix it. That's another thing that I could probably add in the video is I'm down to one orthopedist that will take my insurance. It's called Omni Orthopedics in Canton. And if they don't do anything with this knee, I don't know what the hell to do then. So that's kind of weighing on my mind now. Because they were like, oh, you want to go to Spectrum, but Spectrum don't take your insurance. So you got two choices. Because they said you already went to Cleveland Clinic, and I'm like, yeah. They said, well, you got two choices. You got Tri County, or you got Omni. And I was like, I already went to Tri County, so that means I got one choice. So it's Omni or bust, omnibus, and maybe they can do something for my knee. It's getting pretty hard to hang in there when every freaking crazy ass thing wrong seems to go wrong, and I got a dilly of a story for you uh, about the 220 heart rate and why that occurred. It's ridiculous, but anyways, I just wanted to let you know that I was all right as far as alive. Yeah, the rest of it I don't know. And like I said, this medication makes me feel like I don't necessarily want to be alive, but it's supposed to be keeping me in rhythm and keeping my heart rate low and stuff. And I'm supposed to walk around more. And as many of you have been telling me, get your ass out of bed. You're fucking depressing me laying in bed all the time. Get out of bed, go do something. That's what they were telling me. And that's another thing. It's another like freakish thing I didn't even talk to him about is like the whole Stampy situation made me retreat into this bedroom, and I'll be eating meals in bed and stuff, sitting up just because I didn't even bring up the whole benzo thing and the benzo withdrawal and how they were feeding me benzos, you know, because I'm listed at three volume a day, so I was taking them on the reg when I was in the hospital. But I didn't mention uh, the whole deal about stepping down from Xanax and how Stampy moved in here and made me retreat into a bedroom area where I'm just laying in bed most of the time. Because they said they notice like when you get up and walk around, your heart rate goes from like 80 to like in the 115s, and you know it just sounds too crazy. You know, I don't want them to put me in a psych ward or anything like that. It just sounds too crazy to say like, well, you know, this woman upstairs got fibromyalgia and she sounds like a brontosaurus, and I'm trying to withdraw from the benzos, and was driving me up the fucking wall. So what I do is I hide in my bedroom and I put on my air conditioner on fan or on air conditioner where it's even louder, so I don't hear that shit because it'll drive me freaking mental. You know. And my life is so crazy. When I was telling it to the Lyft driver on the way home, she was looking at me like, I kept saying, "You're gonna think I'm making this up," you know. I told her the machete story and some of the other madness, and about getting sprayed by an exterminator, and then getting having my landlord have the balls to actually say, "I don't appreciate the way you talk to my exterminator." And I told her, the polite person, basically said, "I don't give a good goddamn what you appreciate and what you don't appreciate," and the rest of it. She's just like looking at me like that. And it was kind of funny. She had like some money. She said, "I just put some money in there for lemonade," because she had like where your cup holder was, she had a five and like three ones in there. And I was like, "What is that, honey? A tip jar?" She started laughing and she's like, "No." And I said, "I'll tell you what, you take me through the drugstore, you're gonna save me a bunch of trouble. I'll drop a 20 in there and take that $8 out of there, and it can be your tip jar." And she said, "That sounds all right to me." So that's what I did. Is I didn't care, because I'm supposed to stay on this stuff, and I'm supposed to get it by 9 o'clock, and I ain't got nobody. I mean, these people are cut off, and over here, I'm done with them. And I just got back from an arduous hospital stay, and head's all fucked up from the medication I'm supposed to be keep taking. And we'll see how she goes. See how it works out. I don't really want to put off the dental appointment because it's a freaking mess in there. It's like I couldn't wait. I asked for some of this like Ambisol type shit. Of course, they didn't have any. And we can give her some Tylenol. It's like, no, it don't work. So I already loaded my mouth up with that stuff. So I really need to go to the dentist, but I don't want to push it too hard because the dentist is a high stress type of thing, as it probably is for many of you. It's like, yeah, I mean, just walking around, you get weak from that shit. You just don't have a heart episode like that and just like skip out of the emergency room with it. It doesn't work that way. Especially when you're on this weird medication. So I'll probably have to like put that off and concentrate on just the ones where I have to do the talking, not the. I could go in there and maybe get an exam or something, or explain the situation to them, or but it's a lot of stress. It's like packing too many appointments in a row. One's on the 19th, one's on the 20th. I just got out of the hospital with life-threatening heart condition and all that. So, yeah, I don't have to think about that right now. I got a whole I got a whole 20 hours before I can deal with that mess. So, anyways, I really honestly thought it would be like before. So I was begging everybody in there for gum because the stuff will give you the cotton mouth. And the best I could score was some mints, and they were cinnamon. And I was like, oh, they would have to be cinnamon. I hate cinnamon mints. And yeah, I met some. It's always nice for me because I don't get to see many women. There's not a lot of good looking women, or it's always nice for me to like. That's the nice part of going to the hospital is like most of the people in the hospital are women, and I love women. I love to hear women talk. So I got to see and interact with some women. I mean, it's a hell of a price to pay, but I enjoyed it. That's the part I enjoyed. And hell, I met some uh, person in there I liked so much. I shook her hand. She said, "This is the last we're gonna be seeing each other because my shift's over, and you're gonna be out of here." I shook her hand and I said, "Man, I wish we would have met under other circumstances." 'Cause I told her earlier. I said, "I love your voice. You got a great voice." And I said, "I'm obviously not trying to be flirty or anything like that because I'm an AFib arrhythmia, but that's a highly underrated thing in a woman is a voice because, good Lord, you're going to have to listen to a person talk if you're going to be with them." And she laughed. She had a nice laugh. I didn't get too syrupy and say like, "You know what? I think I'd walk a couple miles in the snow to hear that laugh or anything like that. It's like pouring on a little bit thick there. But yeah, I shook her hand. I said, I hope you ain't married to your job. I see you got a couple rings on your finger. I don't know what that means, but she's like, oh, well, it has been a 12-hour shift. She didn't answer one way or another. But I said, I'm just saying, under other circumstances, I liked her a lot. As a matter of fact, here's how I can tell when I like a woman. Hello. That's what I said to her when she walked in. It was like, you know, she wasn't no young thing either. She was in the 40ish. I don't know how old she was, but she was in the 40ish range. But I was like, hello. I got stuck between hi and hello. So I was like, yeah, it was like instant, immediate impact. And I saw some beautiful women in there. Where I'm like, good lord. As a matter of fact, after I met her, the next one that I saw was like crazy beautiful. But there's something, once you get to be a certain age, something else takes over. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's like you've been around so many people and you met so many people that you can size them up on sight, you know, and then you hear their voices and stuff, and you can tell where they're at. You can, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's like it's something that you should know in your 20s. If you only knew in your 20s and your teens, but you have to have enough experience and have been around enough people to know yourself well enough and to know other people well enough to have the high-low uh, response. But yeah, I liked her a lot, man. I only had her as a nurse for a night shift nurse for one night though. But that's the only good thing about me about for going to the hospital. I actually slept. This is how bad this place is now. I actually slept better in the hospital than I did at home, than I have been sleeping at home. And I don't think the drugs had anything to do with it. Because it's a plush hospital, man. This Altman Hospital here in Canton, it is decked out. You get your own private suite. It's, I mean, even the guest benches and couches, and they got like some fancy chair with a footstool on it and stuff. Everything's like super nice. The food's awesome. It's like, yeah, you even get to control the heat. You always freeze to death in a cardiac unit. That's the thing that I would fear. That's like, I'm sitting there freezing for no reason because that's what you do is you freeze to death in a cardiac unit. Because I don't like nothing touching my stomach, so I'm kind of fucked. That's like one of the worst parts of going to a cardiac unit because you got to have the stickers all over you, little suction cup things all over you, and they can throw a blanket over you, and that's like real comfortable for me. So I'm used to freezing my ass off, and then I'm like, man, it's cold in here, and somebody said you can turn the heat up, and I'm like, what? She says, yeah, you got your thermostat. It's over there on the wall. They turned it up from 71 to 76, and then later on I turned it up to 80. And I kept telling them shut the door because to not to let the cold air come in. So yeah, I was like, this is the nicest hospital I've ever been in, and food was pretty awesome. I mean, it was cardiac unit food, which is usually nasty, but if I wouldn't have ate that first beef tips, it was actually like beef tips with gravy and potatoes and something else. And I was like, damn, this is good, and I was starving anyway. And I think it had some braised green beans in there that were even the green beans were good. But if I wouldn't have ate that meal, I would have got out of there in one day. But the cool Australian doctor in there, whose name was Dr. Duffy, um, he was like, "No, sorry." It's like we could have done that, but can't now. got the full belly. You got to have an empty stomach when you have that done. So I was like, damn, that was an expensive meal. I would like to go back in time and just be starving, and much rather have been out of the hospital. But they wanted to put me on this treatment program anyway, that with this drug that's supposed to be I guess they come out with preventative drugs now that for people that are prone to AFib. And if this one, they want me to keep trying this one, but if this one doesn't work, I'm supposed to make a doctor's appointment and tell a doctor that that it's not agreeing with me. I'd like to try another one, but whatever. There you go. There's a 35 minute of ha ha ha. I'm alive. I'm home. It's good to see y'all. Bye bye. Talk to you later.